Hey everyone, Mike here. We have here a beautiful Soul Red Crystal 2019 Mazda MX-5 RF Club, also known as the ND2, and the ND1 for the 2016 to 2018 model years. Before I go into more detail about the engine and the rest of the car, I want to share my experience with the MX-5. I used to own one, and it was a red 1993 that came with a hardtop, a fantastic 5-speed manual, and a free Rev-8 1.6-liter engine. I had an absolute blast in that car. I drove that thing everywhere, and I even used it to commute to work. Even when it was raining hard, I still drove it. Driving in the rain was fun, but sketchy at times. That back end would come out even when I was turning at low speeds, which actually kept me very alert. Plus, it was a great substitute for caffeine. Looking back at those fond memories, this brings me to this question. Is that original formula from the first generation still found in this 2019 RF Miata? Absolutely. That lightweight playfulness is still there. Even with the added retractable roof, still only about 2,400 pounds and close to 2,300 pounds with the soft top, which by today's standard is incredibly light. And that in turn creates a very fun driving experience, which was the original intent of the Miata. There were differences though. Most noticeably, the first generation was more raw feeling compared to the current generation ND. The current gen ND is more refined, which is expected when you're comparing a convertible that's over 20 years old. I did however enjoy the steering in the NA. I felt more connected, versus the ND steering had less feedback. On the upside, the ND has light steering that will respond to your inputs instantly. When it comes to shifting, both gens were a pleasure to roll gears in. In the ND, the shifter was precise and smooth, but not as mechanical and action boat-like as the first generation MX-5. Mazda made a lot of changes to this 2-liter SkyActiv G engine in order to achieve that 181 horsepower with 151 pound-feet of torque, which is a 26 horsepower and 3 pound-feet of torque improvement over the 2016 to 2018 MX-5s. To extract the most out of this engine, you'll have to rev it out, because in the lower RPM range, there's not much torque going on. And the revs go all the way up to 7,500 RPMs, which is almost Honda S2000-esque. The simple fact that I can rev this Miata that high makes this more fun compared to the previous ND1 models that could only redline to 6,800 RPMs. Despite not being as rev happy, the ND1 actually makes more torque down low, around the 3,000 RPM area compared to the ND2. I'll link up the red down below of a dyno graph comparing the two. Another positive note about the SkyActiv engine was that I achieved a decent gas mileage, averaging 25 miles per gallon after tons of spirited driving. I'm sure others could do much better in the MPG department. Mazda does recommend using 91 octane gas, however it can take 87 octane. Onto the handling. This particular MX-5 is a club trim that comes with the Bilstein shocks, a front shock tower brace, and a torque sensing limited slip differential, which are only found on the manual MX-5s. I love how this MX-5 rode with this particular suspension setup. Yes, there's some body roll, but overall the ride was very compliant, even on very bumpy surfaces. The previous 2016 to 2018 MX-5 with the Bilsteins were overdamped, and some owners decided to swap out the OEM springs for aftermarket springs with a higher spring rate, which better matched those Bilstein shocks. Mazda retuned the second version of Bilsteins in 2019 models to accommodate the stock springs better. My guess is that Mazda was actually listening to feedback, so out of the box, there's no need to swap out the springs in this current model. For the average customer, the suspension will be sufficient for spirited driving. The people who autocross and track will probably end up swapping out the shocks and springs altogether. But if someone who wants to maintain the stock spring and shock setup, they could add stiffer sway bars. This MX-5 is also equipped with the Brembo BBS Recaro package. You'll find the Brembos up front and regular Mazda brakes with red calipers in the back. The Brembos provided excellent braking and might be overkill for it considering how light it is, unless the car sees a lot of track usage. And I think the regular brakes with performance pads would be adequate for most people. When braking, the brake pedal travel was a lot further than I expected, but that actually helps with executing heel-toe since that braking threshold aligns with the gas pedal. For a heel-toe novice like myself, I was able to perform it a few times. During my time in this MX-5, I found that these Recaro seats are really comfortable and hold you in place really well. On top of that, they look fantastic. As a reference point, I'm on the lean side at 5'8" and 155 pounds with a 31-inch waist, and the Recaros fit snug for my body type. I can't comment on how these seats will feel after a long drive. As for cargo space, definitely plan accordingly since there's not much space, which only holds 4.59 cubic foot of volume. Looks like the cargo was good for possibly just one large size luggage, and perhaps two if you're really pushing it. I found that the infotainment system was intuitive to use and smooth. In the main menu, you have several options to select: communication, entertainment, applications, navigation, which this didn't have, and settings. I was able to navigate easily with the control knob, and as well as touching the screen, so overall no issues. Would I recommend the RF Club? Absolutely. As a daily, I would highly recommend the retractable roof because that solid roof helps a lot with road noise compared to the soft top, especially on the highway. But owning the MX-5 as the only car may pose a challenge for some due to practicality reasons. Obviously, you can't carry more than one person, and if you decide to buy a lot of items at Costco, you're gonna have a hard time. Also, $38,000 for a MX-5 is quite a lot. However, this is a fully option now MX-5. If you're okay with spending that kind of money, the Brembo BBS Recaro package with the RF Club trim is well worth it. But for those who can't justify spending $38K, get an MX-5 with a soft top, club trim, and 6-speed manual, and that spec will probably run you around $30K, which is a fairly reasonable price. If you don't need the latest and greatest, there are some 2016 and 2017 MX-5 going for the low $20K, and that is an amazing deal for some. The only one aspect of the MX-5 I wasn't fond of was the steering. I wish there was a bit more feedback with the steering. I'm curious if perhaps a simple software tune could change how much assistance is in the steering. This is just a personal preference and not really a drawback for some. Also, some may be pushed away by the girlish stigma associated with the MX-5. But once you hop in and start driving, you forget all that and concentrate on the only important aspect: driving. It's incredible that this little roadster debuted back in 1989. So for the past 30 years, Mazda produced 4 generations of the MX-5. The NA, NB, NC, and now the ND. What made the MX-5 popular from the start is still well alive in this current gen ND. It's affordable, light, very forgiving, and most importantly, it's just so much fun to drive. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Please feel free to comment below on any other aspects, information, or stories you'd like to share. And I'll see everyone else later.